you, Liz, and thank you so much to Paula and the CEDA team for the invitation to join you today for this Women in Leadership series. It is, I'm from New South Wales, so it's always a pleasure to have the chance to come out to Perth, such a fabulous city. And what a topic it is that we're here to discuss today, the Family Balancing Act. On one level, this question is a very personal question. Is balancing family and career realistic? We all have to face it in our own way. And I'm happy to talk about that. I will talk about it a bit in a personal way, share my own journey, one person's balancing act. But of course it also is a broader question, or there is a broader question within there. And it's a question about the economic benefits of greater female participation in the workforce and how we achieve that. About the business benefits of greater diversity in the workplace and how we achieve that. And I have to tell you that I have spent a lot of time thinking about this topic. I've spent a lot of time reading about it, a lot of time being asked to speak out about it. And I don't think I've come across a document that captures the complexity of this issue quite as well as the Committee for Perth's Filling the Pool report. So Marianne, I have to say, I have to commend you, the committee, and everyone who worked on this report, because it's truly outstanding. So what I would say to you, if you only remember one thing from this luncheon today, I would suggest that you make sure that you read this report if you haven't yet, because if you're interested in the topic of diversity, gender diversity, from a political, business, or personal perspective, I think it's really important. But what is it that makes this report so unique? Well, a few things. First, there are 31 recommendations. It is not a simple task. I reckon we could add a few more, and I might even have a crack at it. But the second thing I think that's really interesting is that you will see that there is a complex diagram that I've found fascinating that gives you a sense of the interconnectedness and interdependence of the various efforts that need to be taken holistically. You can't see this, but it's very complex and very well done. And I think it's why it's such a difficult and challenging topic to talk about, because there are no simple answers. There is no one single answer. And finally, the thing that I really liked as well is that it doesn't just talk to what governments and business organizations can do, it actually talks to women as individuals. This is a task, a broad challenge that isn't something that others can do for us, but we also have our own role to play in our own lives, in our own careers, and also in those of the other women coming through the pipeline. So I commend you. Now, I won't repeat all 31 recommendations, but I think they're all important, and each and every one of them is valid. But I thought I'd just elaborate on a few and offer my personal perspective on those. So I'm going to start with recommendation number 5, and that says that boards need to understand and embrace the economic rationale for gender equality as a strategic competitive advantage, which will provide the imperative for the need to change. Now, in my words, that is basically saying that the change needs to start from the top. And I also think it's saying that people actually have to believe that diversity matters and that it's good for business. So I'd say that it's not just the board. Now that resonated with me, now becoming a director, but it's especially the CEO. So you can set him or her targets for diversity as a board, but I dare say the change does not really happen until the person is actually a real believer that that change is going to make a difference to their business. Now, it won't be a great surprise to you that I'm a believer, but there's a reason that I'm a believer, and that's because I have seen this work. So 4 years ago, in my executive career, I took over Best and Less, which is a struggling retailer at the time, and I aimed to try to turn that business around with virtually no retail experience in my background. Now, why they gave me that job and why I took it is a whole other story, but nonetheless, I did set out to do that without the experience. So I really went out and knew I had to hire the best team that I could, or really probably couldn't afford. But the one thing that I knew in taking on that role is that I needed to have diverse talent. So I quite deliberately, in a team of 9 of us, made sure that we had, when I say diverse, I mean we had introverts and extroverts. So we had the people who kind of thought about things intuitively and those who thought about it analytically. We had big box retailers and specialty retailers, because if you know anything about retail, they kind of also think about retailing very differently. I also had 2 white Aussies, an Indian Aussie, I had 2 Americans, a South African, and a Korean Canadian, and a Korean Malaysian. So not that I sought that, but it's just how it turned out. We also had 6 women and 3 men on that team, and previously the management team had been all male. And my last 2 hires were actually deliberately men. I deliberately chose men when I had the option because I actually didn't want an all-female team because, again, that goes against the face of diversity. And of course, there is a lot to this particular story that I won't go into today, but the key point is that it worked. And we turned that business around in 3 years, primarily by changing the culture. And over that period, interestingly, our 200 store managers across the country went from being about 1/3 female to 2/3 female. So I found really interesting because we hadn't set ourselves that goal. It happened organically, and I think that it was because we really hired for skills, we really managed for performance, made it as objective as possible. We had many female role models in the business, and we created a culture where the diversity of thought really mattered. Everyone's different views were really listened to. So, you know, I have seen this work, and it's why I like to tell the story, because I have proof that diversity actually works. It drives sales, it drives profits, and it drives return on investment. And, you know, telling that story again and again can convert leaders from possible believers into true believers, then I'm happy. That's what I hope to achieve. I will go now to another recommendation, which was recommendation number 15. And that says, organizations should instigate sponsorship, mentoring, and advocacy programs that are both formal and informal. Because, let's be honest, when we are hiring people for important jobs, we don't hire them unless we know that they're good, or people that we know and trust know that they're good, because these jobs are very important. And, you know, we're not here to fill quotas, we're here to get jobs done and get the very best people in those jobs. So if we don't have people, men and women, pulling women through organizations, giving them the visibility, putting them up for these roles, backing them, pushing them to take these roles, then we won't get those sorts of numbers, because that's how it works. So I was asked to speak earlier this year about my perspectives as a female business leader and on this topic of diversity. And it made me sit down and really reflect back on my own experience with regard to the issue of gender. You know, how had I looked at this topic through my career, and what sort of job had I done to support other women along the way? And I thought I'd just share with you briefly the 4 stages that I call 4 stages in my journey of enlightenment. So just to begin with stage 1. So this is what I call the state of being oblivious. So I was young, I was just out of grad school, I'd been told, fortunately by my parents, I could be whatever I wanted to be. My business peers all around me, it was pretty much 50-50. And it's pretty much, you know, the world where may the best man or women win. And I did know that I was working for a motor company at the time. At the top, you know, there were not very many women, but to my mind, that was another generation. It was a long time ago, and it was going to be different for us because it was different where I was. So, totally oblivious to any issues of gender. Then I entered stage 2, and this is the one that actually is difficult to talk about because it's one that I'm not proud of. It was the stage of denial. And this is where I started to get promoted. And at the same time, the topic glass ceiling, these words were starting to become familiar to me. But to be honest, I thought that that was the excuse of unsuccessful women who weren't good enough, weren't tough enough, and weren't ambitious enough, because I was doing fine. Proof to me that, you know, gender wasn't an issue. And, you know, it's a really tough thing to admit to, but at that point in my career, you know, that was how I saw things. And you know, I don't know about this room, but I imagine there are a few people out there who have had this perspective at certain points. But I did finally reach stage 3 as I continued up the corporate ladder, and that's the one that I call enlightenment, because as I moved through the management ranks, I began to see the subtle and not so subtle signs of women's progress being inhibited by lots of things, like maternity leave, the things you know a lot about, lack of adequate childcare options, lack of sponsorships that I just talked about, and unconscious bias. And as with many of you, I have my own stories. My job was made redundant after maternity leave, and I was offered a special projects role so that I could have more flexibility. Mind you, I hadn't asked for it and wasn't looking for it, but that was the view of the sort of role that I was offered at the time. My male peers were getting operating roles, and the women were getting functional roles, and you know, the age-old classic to the topic of unconscious bias. You know, you say something around the table, no one responds. 5 minutes later, when your male colleague says it, everyone's like, well, that's a great idea. And, you know, it's such a cliche, but it happened again and again and again. God, is it just me? And you know, it turns out it's not. Many of us have experienced that. So bit by bit, I started to observe around me, you know, that things were happening and that perhaps there was something to it all. So I think I've arrived now, beyond that, into what I'd call stage 4, which is advocacy. And, you know, I don't keep quiet anymore. And I think as you're working your way up through the corporate ladder, you see it, but you're reluctant often to speak out about it. And, you know, now I like to speak publicly on the issue. I like to try to convert well-meaning people into true believers. I talk to organizers. When I go to a lunch and find myself to be the only female in attendance, I go up afterwards and say, hey, can I give you a hand next time with some other women you might want to invite? You know, I push panel organizers to find more women to be on a panel if I'm the only one. And I'm certainly a vocal advocate for diversity in my own companies today. And maybe the confidence that I have now to speak out about these topics comes from, you know, the fact that I have relative seniority, and so that certainly helps. And maybe it just comes from age, you know, like my wrinkles do, the good and the bad. But I'm certainly confident now. And you know, I'd encourage all of you out there to think maybe where you are in your personal journey, and I think that can be from a female perspective or a male perspective. You know, and whether you're at the advocacy stage, and hopefully you reached it sooner than I did. But I think when you've got so many male-dominated industries like you do out here in WA, I think you know, being willing to speak up at every occasion is really important, and certainly now more crucial than ever. In the few minutes left before you get to eat your lunch, I thought I'd share just a couple more observations. First is to answer the question whether balancing family and career is realistic. For me, the answer has been yes, but it's what that balance looks like, and that balance is very different for everyone, and it's been different for us at different times in our lives. I guess in my case, I'd if I can, I'd add recommendation 32, which is make sure that you marry the right guy or girl. So that certainly helped. Many of my friends who are also in senior business and government roles have partners who have stepped back or stepped out of careers to help them achieve their aspirations. And I've been very fortunate in that regard. In my case, my husband had a very successful executive career. In fact, he lived out here in Perth for a while. But then he retired early to raise our 12-year-old daughter, and that's what he's been doing for the past 8 years. And, you know, that is very challenging for a guy. I mean, he has a very successful career behind him, but he's a guy, you know, he played rugby union, first grade, you know, he's like a guy's guy. He drinks beer and watches footy on TV all the time. And so when we go out and people go, what do you do? He still, after all this time, kind of takes a deep breath before he says, well, I stay home and, you know, look after the kids. And it was challenging for me in the early stages to think, oh my gosh, I'm the breadwinner, you know, I've got a husband who's not working, that's weird. And so, you know, it's not the topics in the recommendations, and I think particularly the first one, which talks about putting the cultural norms on the agenda and talking about those, they're very, very real. So look, I've been really fortunate because that's given me the flexibility that I've needed to continue to pursue my career. But before that, we did do the power couple thing for many years, and that was only possible with the help of nannies and cleaners, and we were really lucky because we could afford that. But of course, these are always personal choices for families, and they always involve trade-offs. And until we have more than 24 hours in a day, I don't think that technically anyone can actually have it all. So you'll always be making trade-offs. But that's not to say, just because we were able to do it, that the availability and affordability of support services like childcare and flexible work options won't make these choices more achievable, more palatable, more realistic for the majority of families out there. And it was interesting reading the report because I'm particularly sympathetic to the challenges that you have out here with the nature of your workforce in WA. So in some senses, you have an even bigger challenge on your hands. I guess the last thing I just thought I'd ask myself is a rhetorical question, is whether I'm optimistic or pessimistic about achieving true gender diversity, whether that's here in Perth or in Australia generally, or even on a global scale. And the answer is that it's a bit of both, kind of depends on the day. So on a bad day, when I'm having a cup half empty day on this topic, look, quite frankly, I despair at the current global zeitgeist, the Brexit, Trump, Pauline Hanson axis of xenophobic anti-globalization, anti-immigration, and anti-establishmentism, if that's a word. Not that there aren't some real reasons and drivers behind all of this sentiment, but the solutions that they're offering, I think are frankly wrong and are very damaging to the prospects of achieving productive diversity in our society and true feminism here and around the world. And closer to home, personally, I am disappointed that childcare and parental leave seem to have slipped off of our national policy agenda, and that things like female representation in cabinet has gone backwards. So when I'm having a bad day, I'm kind of having a bad day, and I think we can paint a gloomy picture. But look, I tend to be a cup half full person. So on a positive day, I see three of our most important global leaders, Angela Merkel, Theresa May, and God willing, Hillary Clinton, as role models, world leaders that will be role models for my daughter and all of our children. I see that nearly half of the new ASX director appointments this year have been female. So we're not 50-50 yet, but at that rate, we're certainly gaining ground. And on a daily basis, I do meet more and more of what I call true believers in the need for diversity, the belief that diversity drives better outcomes. And I'm probably even meeting the grudging supporters, people who kind of go, oh God, I do not look like I don't support it. I'm not totally convinced, but geez, it's a pretty bad look these days to not kind of at least look like I care about it. So, there's a lot of those out there. And to be honest, I'm actually a little bit surprised when I come up against the blatant sexists, because I just, maybe it's me, and maybe I've figured out how to avoid them, but, I think they're kind of a dying breed, and if they're not a dying breed, they're sort of an aging breed, which isn't to say that I wasn't in a room with some female colleagues when someone walked in and said, oh, if it isn't the coven at work. So, sorry, that's a bad day comment. But, but it's certainly much more rare than the alternate. I'm pleasantly surprised by how many people, I think really do believe in the total economic and business benefits of diversity. So, look, on a day like today, I see a very big crowd gathered here in Perth of, some of this community's most influential men and women, and it looks, I don't know if it's 60-40. Actually, one of my board's targets is not 50-50. It's actually 40-40-20, which took me by surprise at first, because I thought, what's the 20? But it's actually, it can go either way. But I see, this kind of a crowd, and I see this many people of both genders here because you passionately believe in this topic and you want to do something about it. And there's a fantastic paper with 31, and even with my added recommendation, 32 recommendations. So on a day like today, I feel very optimistic about our prospects. So thank you for the invitation to join you today. I hope you enjoyed your lunch, and I certainly look forward to the panel discussion in just a short while and hearing what others have to say on these topics. So thank you very much.